QEd Productions presents Drugs in Our Society. Filmstrip 4, Narcotics, Uses and Abuses. From the bright oriental poppies in this field come the narcotic drugs used as medicines to relieve pain and suffering. Also, from these same plants come other narcotic drugs, heroin and opium. These drugs are not medicines. They bring endless distress and suffering to many thousands of addicts. This oriental poppy is scientifically known as Papaver somniferum and grows in the hot countries of the Middle East, Asia, and in Mexico. Before they are ripe, the seed pods are slit and small amounts of white milky fluid run out. This fluid, dried overnight, becomes a brown sticky substance which is harvested. This is raw opium. Opium itself has had medical uses. Tinctured in alcohol, it is called laudanum, which was used for several centuries as a painkiller. Opium is seldom used by doctors today. It is usually refined and purified into drugs which are much more potent than opium. Slight chemical modifications create morphine, codeine, and other pain-killing drugs. Synthetic narcotics can be manufactured and are also used for patients with severe pain. Apparently, all these narcotic drugs act by depressing the areas of the brain where pain sensations are received. The narcotic drugs also depress lower centers of the brain, especially those areas controlling respiration. Overdoses of narcotic drugs paralyze the breathing centers and may cause death. All of the opiate and synthetic narcotic drugs are addicting. They are prescribed by physicians who keep careful records of each patient using such drugs. If used repeatedly, the dose must be gradually increased to achieve the same effect. This bodily resistance to a drug is called tolerance. The body may learn to depend physically on the drugs. When physical dependence is developed, severe withdrawal symptoms occur if the drug is stopped. The Harrison Narcotic Act, passed in 1914, put strict controls on the sale of narcotics and required prescriptions for the purchase of nearly all such drugs. But it was nearly 1920 before the danger of addiction through prescription drugs was realized, and many Americans became accidentally addicted. Now, because of the great care used by doctors dispensing narcotics, accidental medical addictions are rare. But today, in the slum areas of our largest cities, there are many thousands of individuals addicted to an illegal narcotic, heroin. Heroin is manufactured from the oriental poppy. Once the opium is harvested, it enters the black market, where the price begins to rise rapidly. Opium itself may be used as an illegal narcotic. It is often eaten or smoked in the opium dens of the Far East. In the black market heroin trade, 25 pounds of opium, worth about $400, is processed to make 2 pounds of semi-crude morphine base, worth $800. The morphine base is shipped to secret labs, often in Europe, where it is converted into raw heroin, now worth nearly $4,000. Smuggled into the United States, this same heroin shipment is sold to distributors for about $80,000. The drug is passed on to wholesalers who dilute it before they sell it to peddlers, who dilute it even more until it is only 5% pure. This 5% heroin is sold to addicts for $3 to $5 a bag, a total worth of over $1 million. The enormous profit in illegal drugs supports many criminals who care nothing about all the lives destroyed by addiction. Based on processing only 25 pounds of opium, the profits rise from $400 to $1 million. When preparing the drug for use, the addict takes the diluted heroin, places it in a spoon, and adds water to dissolve it. Then, using needles, often dirty, he injects it into his body through a vein in his arm. This is called a fix. Thus, the addicted individual finds temporary relief from the withdrawal symptoms that hound him constantly. Most addicts need 4 or 5 fixes each day. If deprived of the drug for more than a few hours, they suffer severe symptoms: headaches, vomiting, chills, runny nose, and violent shaking. Life for the addict is one continual struggle to obtain more drugs. Soon tolerance develops. Larger and more frequent doses must be used. Soon the addict requires huge quantities of heroin. At $5 a bag for one fix, this becomes very expensive. Addicts often spend $40 to $100 a day just for drugs. They usually turn to crime and are forced to steal several $100s worth of goods each day to support their addiction. For the loot is sold to illegal dealers or fences at about 1/5 the true value. Women addicts, about 20% of the many thousands in the United States, usually turn to prostitution or shoplifting. Other addicts become salesmen or pushers for drug distributors to obtain narcotics for their own use. Often, as the dose increases, even the more enterprising addicts cannot support the habit and in desperation turn themselves in to the police. The addict may be arrested for stealing or for the possession of narcotics and sent to jail. He may become desperately ill from the general effects of the drug, from infections or liver disease introduced by the crude equipment. Such complications, plus the effects of the drug itself and poor hygiene and nutrition of most addicts, lead to many early deaths. Addicts who are caught or who become ill, or those who voluntarily turn themselves in, are sent to centers that specialize in the treatment of narcotic addiction. Best known of these centers is the Clinical Research Center of the National Institute of Mental Health at Lexington, Kentucky. Committed addicts go through a course of treatment here. Those coming voluntarily may leave at any time. Treatment of narcotic addiction by the center includes withdrawal from drugs, medical care as needed, and group psychotherapy. After leaving the center, most patients need further help. Up to 3 years of professional supervised post-hospital services are arranged for the addict in his local community. But the psychological weakness which was responsible for the addict's use of drugs in the first place is often more difficult to correct. Specialists in narcotic treatment find that addicts are basically immature, selfish, and overly dependent. These character weaknesses are very difficult to correct, even by experienced psychiatrists. Authorities admit that nearly 90% of patients treated at such facilities will resume drug addiction as soon as they are released and return to their former surroundings. This usually sets up a tragic cycle of addiction, treatment, addiction, treatment. The cycle may be broken finally as the addict gets older or dies of diseases related to the narcotics. Many addicts die before the age of 40, and some others outlive their addiction. Other forms of treatment are now being used. Narcotics Anonymous, like Alcoholics Anonymous, offers group support. Group therapy in informal living situations involving ex-addicts has brought help to many seemingly hopeless individuals. Addicts need continued help and encouragement if they are to conquer their problem. Much is being done by some state parole and probation departments to help addicts after hospitalization. Psychological growth and maturity take years to develop in these individuals who have made a late start and who must have the support of many sympathetic and understanding friends.